Hello.
Hi, Karen.
Hey. Hi.
So, good evening to everyone. We are here at the EDI meeting. We are remote this week, as all of you, of course, know. And today's date is August the 2nd. And as I said before, this is the New Hanover County Schools Board of Education Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion meeting. And so would like to welcome you all. We have a really full agenda today. And so would like to start that unless we have any other opening words from members of the committee.
I'll jump in and just go ahead and welcome everybody here. I apologize we couldn't meet in person, but sometimes we have bumps. So let's just get with our meeting. We got a lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to discussing, direction of our action-oriented committee going forward. I did send the survey out, so we're going to discuss that a little bit later in the agenda. And if you've not had the opportunity to participate in that, I have left it open a little bit longer because I would love to get as many people as possible. We did get quite a few, but I always feel like it's good to just let it, stay open a little bit longer. But I know Dr. Smith is going to be going over a couple updates first. So we're gonna get through that first before we delve into the other information. We've got a really good presentation from Sean today about equity in special education. So I'm looking forward to it. Take it away, Dr. Smith.
All right, so I think the first item on our agenda is the update from Sofix Solution. Many of you, if not all of you, were able to participate with the site visit that they had with us in June. And just all the feedback that I've received has been extremely positive. There were really thoughtful, insightful, and helpful conversations that took place. Folks are really excited to see the outcomes of the equity audit that is being conducted. We should have those results before the end of this month. We are beginning our second year of work with them. So we've entered into year 2 in our work. And for the most part, it's going to mirror how we started the beginning of the year. Our year 1 work with them, which was through consultation. So right now, they're not, providing any training or any staff development to any specific group, but they are serving as consultants for us to provide us with guidance and insight in how to lead our work forward within the district. And I think it's really important for us to note and to emphasize our work. So they are a resource for us to lean upon and to provide us guidance when we need it and when we request it. So the direction and path and how we use them and how we leverage them really is up to us. And so part of their work with us are consulting hours, and we get to determine how those hours are used each month. And then we also have built-in site visits. And so we will have at least 2 site visits this year. And the EDI committee will be the group that really designs those site visits. And so we're really looking at how we can engage the voice of the members of EDI even more so. So I'd love to pause here and get some thoughts and some reflections, or maybe if there are some questions, like if you've got a question about, well, is this a part of the work? Or is this included, or can this be included? Love to be able to respond to that for you.
Just a quick question to tie it into what we've been doing in our goals. And I know that Stephanie has sent out the survey and asked us to prioritize the goal. What's the number 1 goal we think we should be working on? I wonder if Sofix Solutions could give us some feedback. on our intended work so that what we're doing aligns with what they're consulting on, and we just get a little bit more momentum for the work.
Yeah. So short answer to that would be yes. And what we could do is maybe schedule a virtual feedback session. So something in addition to our regular monthly meeting that we could schedule, and folks could come prepared with their questions. And our consultants with SOFIC, Dr. Smith and Stephanie Smith, could work with us and provide us with that feedback. So thank you for that suggestion. And I can definitely move forward with that. And again, as I said, just as Kirsten just did, we want the work to be driven by us. And when I say by us, by EDI. Everyone in the committee was selected beyond just staff members, very specifically because you made application. You talked about, your skill set, your interests, what you were bringing. And so we really want to leverage that in this work. We want to elevate and amplify that voice and leverage you as a resource. So again, what the scope of work is will be detailed by you and your insights. Any other suggestions, questions?
I think, well, this is Stephanie Walker. I was thinking, once we, get in the mode of having consultations with them and they get to know us and we kind of get an idea of what the work we want to do, I think that will probably help us as we go. Because I know about SOFIC and I've enjoyed working with them, and we're all just trying to figure out how we can fit together. So I think that's probably why we don't have as many questions, but I think we will going forward.
Okay. All right. If nothing else, then I will provide our work group update. And we also have members of our work group. I think Caress, Tyler, and Rachel are here this evening, so they can surely add to this. Our work group met on July 22nd, and we had a fairly good number of members present. Sometimes it's hard in the month of July to get people together. That's really, that time for vacation. And as you know, many of the members, or all of the members on the work group, were our staff. And so a lot of them are not 12-month employees. A lot of them are 10-month employees. So I just really appreciate the time that they give to this work and attending those meetings. And it's always so very insightful. So topics that we discussed were membership. And so we, the work group has a very different membership structure than the EDI. So essentially it's by nomination. And I've already gotten at least one nomination of a future work group member. So an existing person sees where there's a need or a gap, or they know someone who's very passionate about this work, they'll send me their name, I'll extend the invitation, and then they can either accept or decline. And so it's really trying to establish a really broad base in terms of the folks who are on the work group. We even had discussions about how to reach out specifically to new hires to be a part of the work group, to reach out to them in an intentional way. And then we know that we've got a meeting on August the 9th with our new hires. So we're looking at how we can kind of put this on their radar. So we would be actually extending ourselves to over 200 people. And then there was a suggestion about creating a social media account. And then we talked about our equity mentors having a meeting. And that was a program led by Mr. Garcia, but unfortunately he was not able to be at our meeting, so he wasn't able to speak specifically to that. And then we also decided that we were going to put some parameters on attendance. So we meet monthly. And so it was going to be that you had to attend 10 out of 12 meetings. Now, of course, if you had some mitigating circumstances, then, that we will surely show grace in terms of that. But really the expectation, because what happens a lot of times is there are so many starts and stops because you're not in the same group of people aren't in attendance. It's not consistent. So that was this discussion. As I also said, we talked about our meeting schedule. We're going to meet monthly, and we're going to build in, we're still meeting virtually right now, but we're going to build in some face-to-face collaborative events. And we discussed possible activities to do during that time. And then we also want to schedule a student summit. So we want to have a fall summit and a student summit. So the work group has worked diligently to establish equity clubs at all of our middle schools and high schools. And so we want to bring those young people together so that they can network and connect as well. And then we also want to work and connect with colleagues outside of New Hanover County Schools. So as I'm sure all of you know, we have a really strong organization at UNCW. We have a really strong organization within county government. And it's my understanding that they now have an equity officer with the Wilmington Police Department as well. And so we want to connect with those folks. We've got a strong organization with New Hanover Regional, of course, now Novant Health. And so, and then there are other entities, across the county. I meet with a group called IDEA. For the longest time, I thought it was, it stood for Individuals Disability Education Act. Well, no, that's not what it stands for. It was Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and I forget what the A is. But at least for the first two meetings, I thought we were a group just specifically inclined to talk about special education access, but we weren't. And so we've got Monteith Construction and a lot of other organizations that are a part of that. And so we possibly can connect with them. So that's what we talked about. We did debrief from their time with Sophic Solution as well. And we're all waiting on the audit. We're really excited about that. And then we talked about possibly some coaching being provided after that. And then two things that came out of the discussion with Sophic from our time with them this summer was the PD piece for parents. And then the PD piece, well, not really a PD piece, but the connection piece for parents, and then the connection piece for businesses. And so that was discussed in the work group meeting as well. And then we talked about what possible professional development might be appropriate for this year to build upon the things that we've already done. But again, we want to wait for the equity audit to make sure that we are driving from a central place, not just a place of emotion and feelings and that type of thing, but based on what the evidences are. And then also we want to make sure that the EDI is a driver in this work. We want to maintain or actually create an even stronger connection to EDI. But some topic were equity specific to Latinx culture, equity training specific to LGBTQIA students, and then a book study, coaching for equity, and student equity training were just some of the topics that were discussed. And then we talked about the work that we wanted to continue from the previous year, and that was around student equity teams, staff equity teams, book studies, equity coaches, social emotional learning and equity, more intentional practices for high school counselors related to equity, enrollment processes in year-round schools and pre-K, behavior leadership foundations for schools, and AIG enrollment disparities. And then the last thing we talked about was a request for an HR staffing update. And then we had certain things that we had outlined as action items for folks to follow up for our next meeting. So we met for, I think, about an hour and a half, and really good, robust discussion, and a lot was accomplished. I know I said a lot, but Tyler and Caress and Rachel, if you'd like to add to anything to that, please do.
I want to add one thing. I know we talked about and we discussed, and thank you, Dr. Smith, for taking those notes to have them, because a lot of those items I hadn't even forgotten about. But we talk a lot about within the EDI committee about what our action steps are, what our action items are, what are we doing as far as action goes to move our work forward. And in the equity work group, one of the things we discussed was an equity office and the fact that we don't have one yet. As Dr. Smith said, the UNCW has a great one. The county has one. Police department now has one, and of course, Novant Health has a really great one that has helped us with a lot of the work that we're doing and moving forward and keeping those connections of the equitable, diverse, and inclusivity work that we are doing, not just as a school system, but all throughout our community. So I would really like to, I don't know if there a motion needs to be made, whether just saying to, hey, our two board representatives on here, I would like to see New Hanover County Schools prioritize a equity office for the district, whether it's staffed by one person, staffed by two people, I don't care how many right now, I think that needs to be a serious priority we take as we move forward in this work.
Are you making that as a recommendation from the EDI to the board?
I think that should be a recommendation from the EDI community to the board, yes.
All right, Stephanie.
Well, I say we can talk about that. I definitely was going to cover, well, not that exactly, but that is a good point to bring up. I've heard that from a couple people, and you are correct. There are definitely officers. I know the county just created one. And I know that a lot of work that can be done together in between the representatives. So I agree that that is a good recommendation. I would like to see us bring a robust recommendation and to an actual board meeting and see, maybe meet with the chair as well, see if she wants to get that on the agenda. But obviously, if it came out of EDI, it would be a recommendation from this committee, and I'm in favor of it. So let's talk about that. That can be definitely one of the things we work on. So
probably we should
thank you for that.
With the powers to be prior to, so it's not a surprise.
Well, a recommendation is obviously something that the board in full has to vote on. And as long as we bring something really good and we prepare something that is, has a lot of information with it that people can understand, because we understand it as committee members. So we talk about it a lot, but that's kind of why we're here as board members, to bring things out of committee. So I agree that's a good thing we could do. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caress. Tyler, Rachel, anything in addition to?
I just want to piggyback a little bit off of what Caress said. Sorry, it's very weird to watch it pop up on the live stream as I'm speaking to. That always throws me off. Anyway, piggyback on what Caress said, what I told the work group, this is not Dr. Smith's main job. This is not her title, yet she takes it on. And I mean, that's extra hours every week. I mean, y'all see, we get emails at 12 or 2 in the morning, and then again at 5 or 6 a.m., just dealing with equity work. That's secondary to everything else she does as deputy superintendent. And although she's a rock star and crushes it every week and always keeps us going and engaged, that's not a burden that she should have to carry alone. And I think that's part of where we come from, Mr. McManus and Ms. Walker, that this is not Dr. Smith's main role, and that we need an office that's going to support her in that work and is going to support us in the data collection and reviewing discipline and behavior procedures. Because it's like right now, all these different, I attended a workshop today all day for behavior leadership teams for the district and for our school. And Susan Cole, who works for the district, did an amazing job. But a lot of what she discussed is also equity work, and imagine the power that has if you start to streamline everything through an equity lens and you start to think about, okay, well, let's make sure that we have a representative from our EDI office in on this meeting to make sure that we are addressing, inequity within the district. So, 100%, I would, however that needs to work, if that needs to work with like I don't know if it's a call to the audience or if we have to make a presentation. I would love to help with that because it's important. You know, we can't do all the work by ourselves, and it needs to be funded with support. So thank you, Cress, for bringing that up.
Thank you very much, Ty. I won't tell them how much I paid you to say all those things.
I'll check my Venmo in a little bit.
There you go. Yes.
I just want to say I agree with what Tyler's saying. Like, it has to be, I mean, it's a great recommendation, but it perhaps would have budget implications. It's something that we need to bring as a presentation, I think, out of committee. And I support that. And we can figure out the details if you want to, and the timeline to bring it up and how we get it on the agenda. And obviously consulting with, you know, Dr. Faust and the chair, and then other, you know, people like Mary Hazel, you know, that does the budget. So, I mean, so there's more work into it. Yeah. I mean, we all want that, but we've got to give them a good presentation and the benefits. It's worthwhile to do. So I support that.
Yeah.
And I agree with you there, Ms. Walker. It does deserve a presentation, but I think Equity Work Group is going on year 3. The EDI committee is going on year 2. So I think if anyone is able and ready to give a presentation on the work that we've done already, the work that still needs to be done, and the benefits of what comes from an equity office, whether going into and looking at the budget aspects of that, and talking with Sophic Solutions as well as a resource to get this going forward. Even if we wanted to create a small subcommittee today of a couple of us who are willing to go ahead and start working on and rocking those next steps so that we can get this moving, and it doesn't just become something, oh, Caress mentioned it at our board meeting and we're still 6 months out and this presentation and recommendation hasn't been seen to the board yet. Yeah, so I agree much on like all of those, getting the presentation and making a robust sell to everyone involved. But I would like to see us from this meeting come from what those next steps are going to be that we take to get the ball rolling.
So do I hear, Caress, that you want to be in charge of this subcommittee to do that presentation?
I will work on this subcommittee. Yes. Okay.
Because I say, yeah, it'll take a little work, and I get your impatience. I understand it. I mean, that's why I did the survey. I understand. Actually, that's what I took, and I was supposed to cover this in the next part from the roundtable that we had was you know, the work that you guys have been doing. Like, I've only been here 7 months, but I do get that there are people that have been wanting to do things like this for a while. So I'm ready to do action item things. If you're ready to take the lead on that as a subcommittee, I'm more power to you, and who you would like to add to it, whatever resources you need from me or any other board member or, you know, staff, please just say so. We can reach out to me later, or I can get in touch with you and we can work on getting it done in a timeline as well.
And Lena has very patiently had her hand up for a while.
Oh, Lena.
I just put it down before you said that I went in that committee. I'm just kidding. But what I was going to say is that we have enough evidence if we put a timeline together of all the work and all the barriers or the different routes that we have taken over time. This is great evidence to tell that we need something more solid, something more or structured that help us taking the lead and continuing all these great foundation that we have started through time with the equity working group and the EDI committee. So all these elements that we have is just like a recap, and we're having enough tools to make an excellent presentation that is going to be really convincing and grounded on the next steps and what needs to happen with all these things that we've been doing.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, we just need a timeline for that now. And like I said, I think we could get it on the agenda decently quickly. I think we're going to have interim board meetings going for the next at least 4 months. So we'll have opportunities, you know, every couple of weeks to get a presentation ready for a board meeting soon. So be thinking about that, whoever wants to be on the subcommittee to do that. And I'm happy to help you get it on the agenda. Hugh and I will both be happy to do that.
I also want to add, I think Casey Smith would be a great resource. I know she's not at tonight's meeting, but she does extensive work with connecting with other EDI offices for school districts across the state. Because the number one thing they're going to add, the board as a whole is going to ask is, why should we fund this? So we need to produce and be able to say, this is what these other EDI offices in Durham Public County Schools or in Charlotte MEC, I know are two of the ones that she's worked with. So to be able to say, this is what they've been able to do with a funded position. And even if it's a funded position, you know, a chief equity officer, you know, for the county or something, or, you know, whatever that may look like. That's not my forte, the human resources part. So I'll leave that to much more intelligent minds. But I think if we can show the success and, you know, highlight some of our successes, and that we're doing this part-time, you know, we all have multiple other roles. But to be able to say, this is what these other districts have done, we know we can do the same. We have the power, but we need someone that can focus on this full time. And maybe we can look at, you know, I don't know, possible community resources that could help with the budget side of things, or, you know, from the hospital cell. I know a huge part of that was earmarked for equity. I'm not sure if that can get the ball rolling. Just trying to think outside the box. But
I think some really good points.
Sorry,
Tyler. I think some really good points are being made about how if you create an office, you'll have staff who are dedicated to the work and some structure. I heard the word structure as well. And I think another important point is the board can actually charge the superintendent with creating this office and put some stipulations for how the office functions and what it produces for the districts annually, so that not only do you get staff to do work, you get a district-wide statement about what this work is intended to produce for the children of New Hanover County, and exactly what superintendents and others are expected to demonstrate annually toward those aims.
One suggestion I would have would be, it'd be really helpful if we, as an equity work group, and we as an EDI committee, could understand the formal process of what is required to make a recommendation, what needs to happen, who has the power to do that. After one's been voiced, how is there like a projected date to kind of hear back, just so that both groups have transparency, I guess, in the process and a good understanding of what's needed to do this correctly.
Yes, I agree. That's part of the process of forming this subcommittee, to bring it to the board at large and be ready with the presentation with all that information when it comes to budget, when it comes to the things that you're talking about, Rachel, that Kirsten's talking about, that Tyler's talking about, the CREST, everything that we're all talking about, bring that. We can set ourselves a timeline for it. If you want to do, say, have it ready within 2 months or 2 meetings, or 2 months or at 3 meetings, you know, we can get it on the agenda. Generally, it's like a week before the meeting. It's the Wednesday or Thursday, the week before the meeting, it has to be ready. So if you, if subcommittee gets formed, if you all decide, well, this is what we need to know, this is how we want to frame it, this is the presentation. I mean, it's going to take a little time. I know that it's overdue, but to present it to a board where you want to get a vote, you always need 4 for consensus on anything I've learned. So we got to do it, and we got to do it well, and we got to show why we need this. And I think if you do, I think that you will get a good response. Obviously, you never know till the vote's done, but if we can hit it home with a good presentation, it's well thought out, has all these other questions, you know, that can be answered, because you'll get questions for sure. So I just say it's all in the preparation for the presentation to the board. So I agree.
That's great, Stephanie. And if you and Hugh feel comfortable doing so, let us know if we should be writing messages to the board chair and other board members just to clarify our support for what you're trying to do.
Well, I believe there probably is support from other board members. I've had discussions with a couple other board members about this subject. So, the need for it. So I guess it's just all in how it's presented and packaged, and if we've got everything that we can, as much as we can get done for the questions that are going to be answered, it'll make it a whole lot easier to say, why wouldn't we do it? And definitely has to be buying with the superintendent. I agree with that for sure. So thank you.
Can I ask one more question? And Dr. Smith, you may know this, or maybe one of the board members will know this. When was the last time that we created a brand new position within the county where the board had to vote to approve?
Title IX.
I was wondering if it's Jarrell. I wasn't sure.
Well,
Yeah, I think it was.
technically we have positions in our current budget.
Yeah, we just create 2 positions. I believe we just did not long ago. It was recommended by the superintendent and it was within our budget. And so they were approved. So it wasn't that long ago. I don't believe.
Yeah. We're waiting for the state budget.
Yes, that's it. But we approved it.
Yeah.
So those are positions. What about a whole office or division or department?
Probably. Maybe Dr. Smith would know better. Title IX, I suppose. Yeah.
Probably Title IX is the best example of that because it did not exist in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to, in my mind, follow the pipeline for approval. So I'm thinking, it sounds to me like at some point we have to include Dr. Faust, or at least a conversation with him to get his buy-in, because I mean, he's ultimately it's going to come out of their budget. And even if, the board approves a certain earmarked amount of money, we have to figure out to make sure that he's on board too. Because we don't want to create a position, have the board support it, and then this person not necessarily feel like they're finding the district support that they need aside from the money.
Yeah. That's right. I think procedurally, the board can charge the superintendent with doing this, and then the superintendent will do it. But along with the procedure, politically, and Hugh brought this up earlier, shop this around with the board chair first and the others to make sure that you have strong support for it. And as Tyler is raising, shop it with the superintendent too, to make sure that the language really affirms his vision for the district. And so I think there's probably a lot of agreement, like Stephanie said, a lot of agreement across players that this would be a no-brainer, right? This would be a no-brainer. But procedurally, the board can just tell the superintendent to do it. And the superintendent can work with the budget staff to figure out, well, what does it cost and how could we put it together? And the board approves your budget. Have you approved your budget already this year?
Yes, we have. But there's also
on the state.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Yes.
To Tyler's point, there are other probably modes of funding as well that we could look at, so that we might make it easier for approval. I mean, we just had a big hospital sale, so I know there's got to be money out there, and I know there are corporations that probably would support it as well. So just adding that in there.
So thus, back to the original question, can anyone tell us what the exact procedures or steps that need to be taken in order for a board committee to make a recommendation to the board, so that we're not like doing work we shouldn't be doing or doing work too early before we need to be doing it?
Well, I'll give my 10 cents worth, maybe it's 6 cents. Still being new to the board and still learning a lot. We're kind of late in the budget process to ask for a paid position, but depending on the state budget, those opportunities may still be there and even may avail new opportunities. But I think to do it right and to make sure that it's supported and works, that we make sure the superintendent is included and or parts of his staff in what we're trying to do. Obviously, Dr. Smith is already there, and she doesn't have to walk but just a few feet across them, and she can go right in and say, oh, by the way, Charles. But seriously, no one likes surprises. So I think, we can go see and talk to him. LaShawn, you can go with us. I mean, that's power. But you just don't want to surprise anybody and find out what we can and what we can't do. more importantly, I think we need to validate, which I support this position, but we need to validate why we want the position and what this person would in fact be doing. And right now, please forgive me, we still talk a lot. We haven't been doing a lot. And so I'm not sure that validates a position at this point, because I've been on the board, almost 8 months, 7 months at least, and we haven't recommended or suggested or whatever magical word you want to, nor have we really brought anything to the board, Stephanie. And that's not
That's what we're getting ready to talk about, Mr. McManus.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that. That's next. But I agree with you. We need to be action-oriented board. But you have a good point. But so does Chris as well. And what I've learned to be on the board, as long as we have been on the board, is sometimes there is definitely value in bringing forth things out of committee, for the public to even see, for us to show we're doing the work. I mean, I know, I get that it's the strategies to create an office. We definitely got to include Dr. Faust in the chair. We definitely got to include discussion with other board members, and we definitely got to gather as much as we can for a presentation, whether it happens when we want it, exactly when we want it. That's a different matter, but I think it's worth doing, and it doesn't have to be a surprise vote. It can be, we don't know the timeline yet, but I agree we have to work.
I'm not by any means saying, I think we should bring this to them tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting, and I want this office created by October. I think where we're all sitting from my discussions with the equity work group is, I want this to be something known that this is something that the EDI committee is working towards. And we just passed the budget for this year. I want this to kind of, if we can get it moving now, get it talking about, get working on a proposal and a presentation, then this will be something when it comes time to talk about the budget in January and February, and Mary Hazel is looking at her numbers, that she looks at her numbers and can be intentional with it to say, hey, we want to make sure we can budget for this office coming for the 2022-2023 school year.
We better, and Mary Hazel, if I am correct, has announced, at least that's what she told me, that she's retiring next year. Isn't that right, Stephanie?
I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know, but regardless, I agree with Caress. That's good. Good timeline.
You would have told me privately. So
no. I'm not suggesting that, but I hadn't heard it. But I'm kind of sad to hear it, actually. But
John, you brought up a couple of, in at least a couple of meetings, that equity committees in schools is not represented in every school. Is that still correct?
We have a student equity team in every one of our middle schools and every one of our high schools. And then we have 23 of our 45 schools that have equity teams that have been trained. They were trained last year.
And they are meeting?
Well, not during the summer, I wouldn't think.
Well,
but they did meet last year, yes.
And what's the result of their meetings? What happens to the?
Well, I have not spoken with them individually, but I surely could ask some of our school representatives if they would like to come to one of our meetings and share.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be volatile here. I'm saying they do have teams, they do meet. What happens with what they say when they meet?
Well, I think it's specific to each of the schools. I mean, we have not sent down a specific edict that I know of. And again, they were trained last year.
There's no mandate or expectation or policy, or in this case, director, who would follow up with those recommendations either?
Well, each equity team for the schools were trained this year through Equity Collaborative. And those schools have initially started that work. And what I would say is it probably looks very different at each school. There are probably some schools who have really centered around equity for students with disabilities. There are probably some schools that have centered around, different other forms of equity. I think we are in the growing stages of this work with them. Now, our equity student teams are much further along with that. And what I would say, the work that they've done at New Hanover for the last 2 years, and at Murray, I think, for the last 2 years. If, I had a representative who's leading that work, either Abby Nobles, who is our New Hanover County Schools Teacher of the Year, or Brian Jones, who's a social worker in the district, they could speak very specifically to the work that's happening in those schools. I didn't know I was going to speak specifically on that, so I didn't prepare for that for tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Smith. We can talk about that. Maybe we can get it on our agenda or talk about it with the next one, or you guys can get together in between meetings and talk about it. I guess I'm looking at our time. We've got probably about 50 minutes, and we've got a couple more things to get to discuss. But I thank you so much for letting us know. The work group's doing a lot of good work. I had not realized how much work you guys put in. And I'm glad for the update, because there are so many good things in here that I think we all agree are going to be very, very helpful going forward in the district, and that stuff EDI could probably help us with. So thank you for that update. I know Sean's wants to do a presentation soon, so I'm just going to go over briefly the next item on our agenda, which is the survey results. Like I said, I've left it open. I'm hoping that more people want to join in on it, but there were quite a few that did. And the main takeaways for me, or to do the survey, was for me as a chair and group to know how long you've been here, what you hope to bring, because I've seen a couple comments about we're always introducing and things like that. It wastes some time, and I know a lot of people. I've felt the frustration on this committee so far, especially after the roundtable, with doing the work but nothing coming out of committee. So there's a lot of good work and a lot of stuff we can bring out of committee. And I know Caresa's come out with a good plan for creating, a little subcommittee to bring, get a timeline going and to bring that up to the board. And that's the kind of stuff that I really think that we should be working on. We've got we did our 6 goals with the strategies underneath it. And according to whoever answered the survey, that did 2 things that came out of it were that the goals 2 and 3 seemed to be, the things that we should be working on as a priority. Also, and I'd like to say, as the chair of the subcommittee for equitable treatment, we all know right now that that is not only is that the community, it's the goal of the district to work on it with the, I think, let me get the right terminology here, with the school plan for management of student behavior, because I know the goal there is to end suspensions. I know it was part of the strategic plan this last time to do that, but not a lot of work has really been done on it. And I think that, we could come up with a good recommendation if we work towards that. Another question I asked was about how many times to meet. I know when we went away from 2 to 1, there were some people that were at that time just kind of, COVID was hit high. I know there was a lot of people that were very busy, but a lot of people wouldn't mind doing 2 meetings a month as long as we have a strategy to bring stuff out of committee. And I have some ideas to do that. And I would like to kind of go over a little bit of that. I know I had kind of thought to myself that maybe if we have our main meeting every month, that we could discuss updates on things and maybe focus on maybe the priority thing from the survey. And then maybe our second one can be subcommittee meetings, and maybe we could do it virtually. I wanted to start meeting in person. It didn't happen this time, but I feel like we're probably going to have to adjust coming up for the year because COVID's not over, but I would really like to make one of our meetings at least in person and really kind of concentrate on our subcommittee meetings as well. So, if we have a main meeting where we do updates and then we get together and really kind of as the whole committee really discuss steps that we can take to help our priority discussion, and then our subcommittees, we can still work towards what we've always been doing this past 6-7 months and get plans. So I know it's probably not, I've thought so much about this today, and I really think that we can make this an action-oriented committee, and that's what I really want to do. And everyone that I've had the chance and opportunity to speak with, agrees that that's what we really need to work towards. Whatever that looks like, whether it is a recommendation to the board as a whole, whether it's a presentation on what we've worked on, whether it's something that we can give advice to for administration or Dr. Coker when it comes to hiring, just things like that. I think this committee has got so much experience in every arena, and I think that if we decide that we're going to do action things, that we have to really start bringing them out of committee. And I would like to, as a chair, work towards that. I would like to do a better job of talking to all you subcommittee chairs, seeing what you need, if you're missing data or if you need help with getting a timeline going, whichever you need with. And I just think that we could make this committee so much more action oriented. We kind of hit the ground running there with Perez's recommendation, and I think that it would be a perfect example of something that can come out of this committee. Not everything that comes out of this committee may be adopted or may not, but if it's, say, a policy recommendation change, or it's just information for the board that they know things better that's going on in the district that they might not know generally, then all of it's good, in my opinion. So I think what I'm going to do is wait and see if more people want to answer the survey, and I will continuously communicate with everyone about it. And I'm not going to be here for the middle of the month. So starting in September, I would like to start kind of our new meeting schedule, where we meet the first and third, the first being in person, hopefully, if not Zoom. And then the second one is subcommittee work. And I don't know what that looks like yet. I have to talk to Dr. Smith about whether or not we can do, I think you said to me at one point, Dr. Smith, we can't do breakout rooms because of public meeting, but if that's not possible, perhaps we can carve out the time, maybe the first half hour to do updates and then just break off and everyone can just meet, because some of the feedback I got from people were that they wanted to have your subcommittee work to be able to put it on their schedule, but they want it to be meaningful. And that's definitely what we want. We don't want it to be work that's you feel like your wheels are spinning. I would love any feedback. I have thought a lot about this, and I figure if we're going to start being a committee, which we should have been, but we just haven't. It's okay to be an action type of committee where we bring things out. I'm supportive of that, and I feel like I would like to do it at least once a month. If I can bring, committee reports, or any of you can come and do a report as well, I would be happy to support that. But I haven't been reading the chat. If anybody wants to add anything, please, pipe up and say something.
So I'm not sure about the breakout rooms per se. I'm not familiar with the fact that you can't do breakout rooms. I've never heard that.
Oh, that you mean
that you can't, because I know we were doing those before. So I've never received that information. So my apologies if we were doing it wrong before.
No. I've never been a part of breakout rooms since I've been here. So I didn't know if it's something you had done before, but I wasn't sure how it was. I know we have our once a month meetings. And I would like for us to have a subcommittee meeting, so we have that dedicated time to work on our subcommittee groups, but also get, input from the rest of the committees. That was some of the comments that I had gotten as well, that, having that dedicated time to do subcommittee work is important, but it needs to be devoted time, and it needs to be, where we actually get things done. And sometimes we can give input to each other because some of them overlap a little bit too. Jarrell, I know there's stuff in the chat. I wasn't sure if that was for us or what. Okay. So I think Jarrell said that they need partners. Is that part of the conversation, Jarrell, for this discussion?
No, that was ongoing. It's
okay. You haven't.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
And I noticed Sean has her hand up.
Oh, yes, please, Sean.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention I have participated in a breakout room successfully before on Zoom. And the only issue is you can only record one of the breakout rooms.
Right.
So you can do it. There's the functionality, but you can't record like each of them individually. So you just have to like pick one and go.
Yeah, that's kind of what I kind of meant logistically. I think I think we can have informal subcommittee meetings. I just don't know. I don't know if there's any rule against that or not, or whether we has to be recorded. But, you know, whether we're meeting in person or whether we're meeting on Zoom, it just makes it easier for people to be able to have the flexibility. And as long as we don't have any parameters where we have to record everything, you know, I think they would be a good thing, because, you know, even if we meet as a whole committee and then go to breakout rooms, I just think that that would devote the time to getting subcommittee work done, which I think is very important. And you guys have already done so much good work with the subcommittees already, and they're all worthy discussions. But if we can break up our time where we can actually get, the survey I did talked about the 2 goals that were the most important. And I think there definitely is a drive to look at suspensions. It seems to be definitely a topic of the moment. It's, you know, we have the district working on the management of plans of student behavior. I met last week to talk about the components of it. And actually, you know, SOFIC, when Dr. Smith gave us the SOFIC update, when they were talking about partners, community partners, parent partners, that's another thing I think that they're working on as well with this component with the 10 schools. And my hope is that we can drive this work to supplement and help the districts in any capacity that we can as EDI. And I know SOFIC would probably is the same type of thing that they're trying to do, is to get us all kind of work better together and, you know, more and for support reasons. I didn't mean to suggest that we couldn't do it. I know that we can do it. I just didn't know whether we had limitations on what we could do with meetings.
And I'm sorry. Tyler has had his hand up for a while.
Thank you, Tom.
I was just going to say, Stephanie, I agree 100% with you. I really want to go back to 2 meetings a month, with just one of those meetings solely being focused on subcommittee work. I know we had this conversation probably 4 or 5 months ago. And I think it's just difficult, you know, when you've already budgeted the time for twice a month, and then, you know, it's like, okay, we're switching to once a month, but then once a month y'all meet on your own. It kind of became difficult, because I think when someone else organizes the time, it becomes really easy. It becomes easier, I think, to come into the meeting. It seemed to me, I feel like last time the holdup with doing the breakout rooms was then it wasn't technically open to the public, so it wouldn't follow board policy. I feel like that was the hang up we had last time. And that was
that's what I was thinking. I agree. That's what I was thinking.
But if we can get around that, I mean, I you know, not that we don't want to be transparent to the public, but if we can somehow figure out how to navigate that, you know, if we have one meeting that's fully public every month, and then maybe that one meeting we report back on what was discussed in the subcommittee from the previous meeting, you know, make that a purposeful beginning to every one of the big meetings. Maybe that's a way we can kind of get around that, because just speaking from my own perspective, I know this summer and everything, it's been very difficult for Thad and Franchon and I to get together. So I think just having a dedicated twice a month, nice and easy, we're going to have one big whole group. The next meeting is going to be the first 10 to 15 minutes. We'll kind of catch up, and then boom, an hour of subcommittee work, and then come in for a closing. I think that could lead to a lot more powerful work.
I think just to compliment what Tyler's saying, maybe you want to bring a question to your board attorney. And the question is, does the open meetings law pertain to any community member who happens to be participating on a subcommittee? Or is it just for elected officials? And is the guideline something about you can't have a quorum of elected board members at a meeting that isn't public? It might not. I mean, we meet all the time, don't we, as subcommittees, to plan our work for this meeting? I don't think that's a violation of your expectations under sunshine laws, but check with your board attorney and just get the exact language, and then we will adhere to whatever the exact language is.
Yeah, we're actually starting a new agenda rotation this tomorrow night, actually. And we're adding a work session. I think that is going to be a discussion for committee work and committee questions in general that a lot of us have had, especially new people on the board, about how committees work, how they should be run, meaning, you know, membership, et cetera. And I think I can bring that question tomorrow night, and we can really talk about it. because I feel like, I think we do, well, there's obviously just 2 school board members here right now, but I don't know how it works with official committee members, like you said. So I personally would like to have, like Tyler suggested, devoted time to subcommittee work where we can maybe get together, give feedback, and then break out into our rooms. And I really was going to start as the chair, be in touch with all of you pretty regularly, to see what you needed, to see what we can set timelines for bringing things out of committee, how you feel about it, whether you want it to be an actionable thing, a recommendation, or a policy change, and just really get us moving. Because I feel like we've done so much already, and I know you all are feeling the frustration of doing, some of you, 2 years worth of work and really not bringing anything out. And we want to change that. So that's what I was hoping to do with this restructure and kind of discussion on the focus survey. And I like the idea of doing the 2 meetings with the subcommittee work being the wholly what we do for the second meeting. So I will check into that, and I will see, we'll make sure it's okay to do. And if it is, I think that would be a good start, starting in September, if you guys are game for it. And then I will start a rotation of contacting you all regularly, sending emails regularly to the whole group to let kind of people know what's going on with each subcommittee, and just so we all communicate a little bit better. And if there's anything that you see on each other's committees that you could help with, or maybe that you can add to, or that overlaps, then we can communicate that way. So does anybody want to add anything else? I know this is kind of a lot, although it seems like a lot. I've thought a lot about it, but I like the idea so far. And I think, like I said, if we just concentrate on being action-oriented committee, whatever that looks like in the end, it doesn't always have to be a suggestion for a policy change, but things like Caress brought up, whether we recommend out of this committee having another office just for EDI work, or an equity officer, that's a great idea. That sounds like a good idea, good timeline, and just getting all that stuff in place. But we can do that on a multitude of levels here with our subcommittee work.
Stephanie, Tyler and Caress have their hands up, and Kamika.
Okay, thank you.
I
can't see the hands up, so I should probably do better with that. I apologize. Who was first? Who wants to go first? Go ahead.
I want to mention that in a piggybacking off of the subcommittee work, one way we could do it is just dedicate the first 45 minutes to maybe subcommittee group 2, and then dedicate the second 45 minutes to subcommittee 3. That way, not everyone has to be on that call or on that Zoom at one time, but you're able to still kind of record it if you're not doing them simultaneously.
I'm writing these down. I'll check. Those are questions I can ask. So that would definitely be a good question. Okay. Is it Tyler was next?
Hey, that was it just didn't get taken down last time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm good.
Okay.
And then Kamika.
Okay, go Kamika.
I'll put it in the chat. So you can read it from the chat. That's just my question for the group, or how ever.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to send my ideas out to y'all about what I kind of envision as our structure, and just, I'll get as much feedback as I can, but I do like the idea of really, turning this work into action. And I feel like this is the best way to do it. And we'll start to see things come out of committee, and I'm all for that. I think that's definitely worthwhile. I know from listening to you guys last time that it was just like, oh, we've been doing all this work and nothing's coming out. And I feel your frustration on that. And I've only been here 7 months, so I get it. Hugh and I definitely are board members that like to get things done. So I like to get to a place where we're actually regularly bringing things out. It's my vision or my hope that we can do it on a regular basis, even if it's just once a month, even if it's just an update. If someone's not ready yet to bring a recommendation or have a discussion or present, we could at least, let everyone know what we're working on. And because I feel like the more we talk about it in public, the better. There's merit to that too. So, all right. So if there's no other discussion on that, we can go to our next agenda item. Let's see, we got about 30 minutes, so that's good. Sean, do you want to go ahead and start your presentation?
Yes, I am happy to. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
We see it. Yeah, I do.
Excellent, fantastic. So I went to this, I went remote conference this summer, and it was specifically on inclusion, or excuse me, the segments I went to were specifically on inclusion and special education. And there were some really good tactical things for, you know, how to use technology and behavioral supports to help support this. But I'm going to focus on more of the strategy and administration side. But I did send those out in case anybody would like those more like hands-on tactical hints. So what I would like to focus on, let me see. All right, so why inclusion? This is no surprise. I've mentioned this before. I'll focus on just these two. Time spent in general ed is strongly and positively correlated with math and reading achievement for students with disabilities. Students with intellectual disabilities that are fully included make more progress in literacy skills. And, you know, to get in front of questions, this is all in the face of students without disabilities also make greater progress in reading and math. So it's really kind of a win-win. And there is a significant amount of more instructional time in gen ed than in special ed, which is kind of counterintuitive. But in self-contained settings, there's a lot of focus on non-instructional time because maybe you've got like care and tending that's needed, but there's a lot more. This is a huge delta. There's 20% more instructional time in general education than in special education. And that's really important because you're dealing with children that need that extra practice. And I've got other slides and research as well attached that you might be able to see. But I didn't want to go through everything because it's just pages and pages of research on the advantages of inclusion in special education. 40 years of research supports this. So I've said this to the committee before, so no big surprise. And why else is this also required by law? To the maximum extent appropriate, children are not to be removed from typical children unless they can't, you know, unless the severity of disability is so much that the education in regular class can't be achieved, even with supplementary aids and services. And it says this many places in IDEA. So no big surprise, and a nod to Dr. Smith's earlier comment on IDEA. And the presenters that concentrated on inclusion were Tim Vligas and Ashley Meyer-Barlow. And one of the big takeaways and one of the arguments for a separate classroom is often, well, the student can't keep up. The student can't, the gap is just so large that the student can't access grade level curriculum. And my challenge to that is there's so much technology here that can bridge that gap, even with typical kids. And that's part of what an IEP is for, right? If a student could access grade level curriculum, they might not need an IEP. There's like the concept of keeping up is kind of counterintuitive. And also, you know, one thing to consider is that students with intellectual disabilities are notoriously hard to get accurate test results. There's so many physical barriers that can get in the way, like fine motor skills. So lack of being able to write what you're thinking, or speech skills, lack of being able to say what you're thinking. And so it's really dangerous to take a test result and apply that when those like, you know, those tests have often been, standardized tests have often been shown to be not appropriate for children with disabilities, and people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities specifically. And another challenge to that, the concept of keeping up, is not everybody in that classroom is keeping up, whether they have a disability or not. There are plenty of typical people, typical students that need extra supports, and that those students are not excluded from the classroom just because they need extra supports. So there's a lot of value to differentiation in any classroom. And here's some ways to get into it that I'm not going to get into in detail, but here are some ways to help bridge that gap. And it's really important to understand that there's nothing in IDEA or in the law that says a student has to keep up, the phrase keeping up. It's an accommodation, it's modifications that we need to focus on. So with that, how can we move forward and make inclusion happen? And one thing I learned that I found super interesting was benchmarking. You know, Tyler mentioned benchmarking earlier. And here is an example of a school district that is very successful with their LRE ratio. LRE is least restrictive environment. Inclusion is usually kind of a casual term thrown around for a student gets to spend more than 80% time in general ed. And this is quite a high ratio. Almost 90% of kids, our students, are included in the regular education class. And that's well above the state target in Portland. And so I'm going to go into a little more detail about how they did it. Our score is lower, and I'll go into a little more detail on that, but our score is a little lower. One of the things that they found that is really helpful is that increasing student voice that has been so, a theme of some of our subcommittees, particularly Goal 2. So that's really kind of exciting because it feels like we're on the right track with that. And I did share that OSEP has found, Office of Special Education for the DOE has found that when there's a high percentage of students in separate programs, it's an indicator, right? It's a metric that we can use. And they talk about specifically some questions for when you're observing this, some questions we should be asking ourselves. And those includes our supports and services that are available in separate settings, also available in general education. Are the school district and parent in agreement for a more restrictive setting? One is, can a child's IEP be satisfactorily implemented with supplementary aids and services or in a regular education setting? So it's like there's a lot of questions that imply that LRE is the preference. So this is just a plot. This is only North Carolina schools, and the target is 65%. So you want to be above the green line. We are unfortunately below. This is dated data, though. This is from 2019, but 2020 was a unique year. So I don't know how meaningful that would be anyways, because we were all kind of in different environments while we were learning. And then here's, so I'm sorry, let me go into more detail on this. This plot is the number of students, is the percentage of students in the classroom greater than 80% of the day. This is gen ed. So are the students mostly in gen ed? And so, good is high, and I'm not going to say bad, but our target is higher rather than lower. And then this plot here is you want to be, this is if a student is in a completely separate environment, which means they are with no non-disabled peers. They are with only children with disability or students with disability. And so you want to be below this line because you want to have maximize students being included and maximize least restrictive environment. And we're a little high on this one. Not as much though. We're performing a little better on this one, but still some room for improvement. And so if you look at the benchmarking, some of the things that popped out that kind of have the culture to make inclusion work are flagged in this. This is the benchmark school, West Linville. I'm not sure what the other W is, but one of the takeaways that I had was strong collaborative relationships between gen ed and special education teachers, because the special ed teacher can't do it all on their own. They can't be in every classroom all the time. So that's kind of a logistics question. They're the experts in many ways, but they also need support. And so who better to support than the general education teacher? And there's a lot of, everywhere that I've seen inclusion be successful, there's been a very successful model of co-teaching that happens. Oops. And then strong behavioral and academic supports. And this kind of flows into this where it's peer support as well. A lot of our children are visual, and so positive peer modeling is really essential for this to be successful. And so these are the benchmark schools focus areas. I flagged some that I thought were like things that would be really helpful. I mean, everything's great, of course, but I love that they focused on student voice and creating inclusive cultures. We do a lot of instructional practices that are pretty good. Like I know we're really familiar with UDL. And so I really liked that. And then this kind of, I really also liked this engagement strategies capitalize on student strengths, because the model of disability, and I think I mentioned this back in June, the model of disability is so deficit based. You've got to prove you have a need for extra supports and services. So we look at all the deficits of a student with disabilities. But it's really like just a diversity. It's a difference. It's not really a deficit. And there are a lot of value that learners who learn differently can bring to the typical population. So I liked that was, specifically said. School team partnership, I think that this is huge. And then this, again, student-centered collaboration. I think that putting the student at the forefront is super important in getting to where we would want to be. And so this is a 7 components of inclusive and equitable learning communities. These are applicable, in my opinion, to all kids, not just students with special education. And I just highlighted some targets and vision. And when we talk about guiding questions, we talked about like, what are some day-to-day practices that we can do to make inclusion work, to align with the district's vision. So I highlighted some that like I thought could be helpful. This more independent, students becoming more independent. That's all about like fated support. And then just some recommendations they had. They had recommendations for UDL, multi-tier support, co-teaching, where the general educator is an expert in the curriculum content, the special educator then helps with making that content accessible. There are right now 306 college programs for students with intellectual disabilities. So you talk about like 306 college programs have found a way to make their content accessible. That's all with modification and accommodations. So if we can do it at the college level, there's definitely ways to do it at the non-college level. And I will say that a lot of the movement to more restrictive settings happens at a very, very young age, which is kind of a shame because it doesn't really give that child the opportunity to have as much access. There are definitely places and supports where like maximum support is needed, but as a stakeholder, I don't necessarily see that happening at the age in which it often happens. So that's something to be cautious of. And things that you could do to remove the barriers are, do partner with the community. We have mechanisms right now, such as the advisory council, where there could be really good movement on just a collaboration with stakeholders and people who are in the system to know what the barriers are that we need to remove. And then, SOFIC Solutions, for example, or the office that Caress just kind of proposed could be a great way to to collaborate on bringing in an inclusion specialist or help assist the schools that could use this. So keeping moving on. So I've got some resources, and I kind of would recommend that we have this great benchmark. The resources, this TIE Center and the MCIE, TIES stands for, let me see if I can, I'll get it in a second, something inclusion, whatever. And then MCIE is, let me see if I can find it. If I can't find it quickly, I'll just take it offline. Yeah, I can't quite find it quickly. I'll look up what they stand for. But these are both organizations at the national level that their whole goal and mission is to maximize inclusion for students with disabilities. And so they talk specifically about systemic change and how to make that happen. And they talk about what state, district, and school administrators need to do. And I did include some of this information down here in some of these attachments on collaborative team practices. Let me see if I can find it. And the school administrators document specifically is actually really helpful in, my apologies. All right. Yeah, this document is specifically on moving towards equity and access through inclusive schooling, and it's just for administrators. MICE is Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education. And so these are great resources. The TIE Center specifically focuses on, okay, here's how to use your data, which is really great because we've got this partnership with Cape Fear Collective that we're going to be able to start having, really access to like more data on where we need to focus. And then here are some takeaways for how to move towards equity and access. And the big takeaways were vision and leadership of the building administrator. You're never going to get buy-in. This is across the board. You're never going to get buy-in without the buy-in of the leadership. So we need to make sure that the leaders are aligned, and then student-centered planning and collaborative decision-making. I think that those are also critical because an IEP really is individualized. There are some parents that want, as much inclusion as possible. And there are some parents that know their children and their students need more support. And so I think that collaborative decision-making and student-centered planning really gets to the meat of what IDEA is meant for. So I like that. I think that it's all it drives collaboration. It drives a lot of family engagement. So I pass these resources along. And then this is just some of the stuff we've talked about already: co-teaching, co-taught, collaboration, using data-driven techniques and interventions. So it's just in a visual, essentially. So, I want to end on a positive note because I think that there's a lot of good things that we are preparing for in this work. And I will say that when I attended this conference, one of the first questions I got from some teachers that used to teach for Henry were, oh, can you pass along any lessons? Can you pass along anything? So I know that the staff is really, what's the word? They're really trying to do what's best for the students and trying to keep learning. And so I really feel like, people who go into special education go into it for a reason. So I think that there's a lot of ways to kind of improve the statistic of getting more kids who want to be in general education. And what I would like to do is, I think we've got the right steps, but I also think that there's a lot of work that it takes to do cultural change. And I would like to, if we're going to kind of focus on goals 2 and 3, this seems like a natural task that goal 2 could be part of, because that's all equitable access and inclusion. So that would be my recommendation based on this is to spend a little time going through these resources in what maybe one of our subcommittee meeting and talk about, what are the barriers right now and how do we think, because I'm just a parent, I'm a stakeholder. I don't know what the difficulty is in, making this happen. All I do know is it's very local, and it can be challenging as a parent to like deal with something that's so local and, difficult to navigate. And so I don't want to like minimize how easy it is, but to Stephanie, to your point earlier, and to Hugh's point, would it make sense to like pilot something? Like at what point can we do something to move it in the right direction and take data that's meaningful? Because, we're on the heels of COVID, and a lot of children with disabilities especially had a very challenging year. And in that year, a lot of kids were unfortunately moved to much more restrictive settings. And it would be a great way to, as we're trying to reopen again, to try to like focus on, getting back to like using the 40 years of research to make some of those decisions when we're in our annual IEPs. So, data and culturally, like it's going to take years to really measure like some of these efforts because IEPs are typically only annual. But my recommendation would be to see what we can do in working to kind of, get kids LRE time maximized. So anyways, that's what I wanted to share. And please let me know, I'll look into the chat now, but please let me know if you have any questions as I'm looking into the chat. Thank you, Kirsten, for finding that acronym for me.
There's a lot in the chat, Sean.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good content.
Yeah, it does seem like it.
Yeah,
better training on co-teaching. I definitely, if inclusion was easy, we'd do it all the time. Nobody wants to include or wants to exclude people. Like I definitely know that everybody goes into education in general to really make a difference and be inclusive. But yeah, it's not easy. And so what are those barriers? I think that's a really important question to ask. Human resources, rethinking structures.
Great presentation, Sean. You're getting tons of kudos in the chat now.
Yes, thank you.
I would say, Sean, just real quick, because I know we're running out of time, but I love the presentation was great. And you and I have had a personal conversation about our own journeys with our kids when it comes to getting help with their needs. And I think that if it's something that your subcommittee wants to work on and you feel, I would just recommend, getting a good that was a good presentation too. But like if you're wanting to see something to come out of committee to the board, I am happy to give you time and space for that at board meetings, put you on an agenda or your subgroup and, see where we go. I would love to see, I just feel like the more information that's out there, the better. A lot of the time when I'm talking just from a board position, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, we don't get to see, and information we don't have. And, having this stuff in front of you is very important, I think. So think about what you want your subcommittee to do and what kind of action you want to come out or recommendation. And, let's just go from there. We got to start somewhere,
Right.
And I just want to speak real quick to something Cress put in there. I'm not in no means wanting to insult the work that you guys have done for years. I know you guys built this from the ground up, especially in the work group. And I know you guys have been working really hard. Me as a board member on this particular part of the EDI committee, I have to figure out what we can do to bring it out to the board and to make action. So you guys have done great work. And I'm not ever going to take that away from anything that you've done. But I just, from my perspective, this is the feedback I'm getting that people just want to see more. And that's what I'm hoping I can help with, or me and Hugh can help with in regard to that. So anyway, Sean, Do you want any last words or thoughts about your presentation? Looks like we're not going to be able to get to everything on the agenda, but I would love for you to kind of close us out with some last thoughts, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, my last thoughts are, as I mentioned at the beginning, 40 years of research show that inclusion is best for children with disabilities. That is also, it doesn't hurt the education. It, in fact, improves education and test scores for children without disabilities as well. So it's really a win-win, but admittedly it's difficult. And so I would love to know some of the roadblocks, some of the barriers, so we can focus on, recommendations that are reasonable, that are achievable, that make sense. So that feels like a really collaborative approach. We have a mechanism for that collaborative approach with the advisory council. And so we do have means to do it. They have shown too, the research also shows that the number one prediction for success of inclusion is the school administration's buy-in. And I want to thank everybody here, because, you are all part of the administration in many ways. I mean, there's stakeholders and I'm just a community member, sure. But I appreciate the ability to talk about this sort of issue. And I definitely find it inspiring that people are willing to do the work, the work that Caress talked about and Rachel mentioned earlier, because it is often difficult. So just, thank you for the space to go through some of the lessons learned and takeaways I had from a strategic level. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Well, and I would just want to say, let's not discount stakeholders that are parents, because I know we know our kids really well, and sometimes that gets missed a little bit when it comes to communication about what we think is best. And I know I've run into those, and I've talked to parents that have as well. So we can fix that. I won't say fix it, because it's not something that's necessarily broken. It's just way we communicate. How about that's probably a better way to say it. And parents struggle really hard sometimes when it comes to their kids and what's best. And I think when we have a team of people that are there to kind of help figure out how to best help our kids learn, I think that's the best outcome for our kids. So yeah. Thanks so much, Sean. I would love to talk to you obviously later on too about this too, to see if we can strategize on ways to make it come out and as an action. But we did not get to our agenda item number 8, which is suspensions. That is the topic of the moment right now. I know we have administrators that are working on the behavioral part of it with 10 schools, and I wish we had time to get into that, but it's okay. We'll talk about that more. But do you, Hugh McManus, want to close out with anything today?
That was my agenda item, was to get input from all of you on the suspension of 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, because we do need to talk about that, and I value your opinion tremendously, because I like the fact that everybody speaks their mind, so I like that. So I guess we'll do that next time. But Sean, that was wonderful, and I know you took a lot of time, a lot of effort, personal and otherwise, to make that happen. So thank you.
All right.
Dr. Smith, did you anything?
No, I was going to say, I think we are at the end of our agenda, and I really appreciate the comments and the input and the insights from everyone. And I put it in the chat, but I'm going to lift this up to you specifically, Sean. I learned something every time you speak, so thank you for that. And again, I really appreciate the time that you guys have given to this work, your commitment to this work, and I remain hopeful that we are going to see even greater things come as a result of the work and the commitment that all of you have. And so with that, I hope everyone has a great evening.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks as always, everyone. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
You made me hungry, Tyler.